go.
Hey, good evening, everyone. This is the City Commission briefing session. Is that good, Jared? And at this time, we typically discuss calendar items or meetings we've been to, update each other on housekeeping matters and other advisory board discussions that are going on in the community. Very informal, no actions typically taken during briefing sessions, and we just kind of go around the room and say what's going on or update each other. Ron Fear is not with us this evening, neither is Commissioner Estabrook. He will join us. Commissioner Estabrook will join us via Zoom, but I'm going to start off with Jason Hilgers, our Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The document prepared for this evening really doesn't have a whole lot for updates, just highlighting the PowerPoints that were handed out in the mail folder. We have 3 public hearings tonight, no general agenda items tonight, so, but I do believe you have 4 proclamations, is that correct? Yes, 4 proclamations and 3 public hearings, so it's kind of an unusual evening, but
Right.
We'll wade through it. I do know Dennis has a Spark update. Other than that, we would just mention the Intergovernmental Luncheon on October 26th. Those items to Kristen by today, if you're going to attend, or you have anything you'd like to cover. And then the National League of Cities, November 18th through the 20th is virtual. There's an early bird that well, it's already ended, but it's $275 a member, even for the virtual. So
Oh, okay.
it's kind of pricey. So there is a schedule that I believe we've sent out to you all for the National League of Cities. So you can take a look at that and let us know if you're interested.
Right, and I believe when I last spoke with Ron, and maybe he said something to it, the AUSA, he was able to watch a presentation or 2, I think, for that.
He was, and I think it was going on at the same time the League of Kansas Municipality
Right.
Conference, which I believe Commissioner Morse also attended. So he definitely had his fill. I haven't received much of an update from him, so maybe next time we're together he can provide one.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Jason.
Thank you.
Dennis, Spark update.
Yeah, well, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I am pleased to say I had in my hand today our first reimbursement check for $397,569.65.
That's what we want to see.
And now,
Finally.
so that check basically covered some staff payroll that we're eligible for. There's about 11 employees who spent more than 51% of their time on COVID issues. So we were able to get some of their payroll and benefit costs or eligible expenses. And then a lot of it also covered a lot of the miscellaneous expenses that the city's incurred since March. When you think about the face masks, the other protective equipment, the cleaning supplies, disinfectant, computers for telework, some technology upgrades, and much more. So this is the initial payment to cover some of those expenses that have been incurred. And our allocation is the same. So Riley County had about $16 million to allocate, and the city's amount is $2.998 million. So we've already got basically $400,000 of that allocation. And so we have about $2.6 million left to seek reimbursement. As we've highlighted before, though, as we've gone through this process, the funding from the state Spark has been ever evolving. We've had different reporting requirements being requested. There have been some different eligibility standards that have been rolled out. There's been some new agreements required between the service providers and the local entities. And of course, all this is within the context of having all of our spending done by December 30th with a local review of November 30th to evaluate if they need to reallocate funds. So we're all under this tight timeline. But in addition, the state just rolled out a new rent mortgage program that I'll talk about this week. Also, they've announced some of the recipients of the Department of Commerce business assistance grants. We've heard of some local businesses that are recipients of those. They're also still finalizing their phase 3 funding about how they're going to utilize some of those funds. And then again, they're in an evolving process. If there is any excess funds, how will the state reallocate that and for what projects or what services? So against all this backdrop, has been the conversation at the federal level. There still could be another stimulus package. And also, we've had movement from our state senators about extending the timeline by which coronavirus funds can be spent. So maybe not the December 30th deadline that everyone's been working under. But let me assure you, we will get our full allocation of the 2.9 million, and that's our intent. But also, we want to make sure that should more funds be available, if we hear round 3 the state's doing, or if there's excess funds locally or from the state that has to be expended before December, we want to make sure that we're in a position, if has an appropriate program or there's some new eligibility requirements, that we will be prepared to go if there's additional funds available. But we also want to inform you tonight that we're going to kind of change our approach a little bit, or our strategy to get our full reimbursement, to reach our full 2.9 million allocation that I said. As I've communicated, there are several things that qualify and are on our list for reimbursement. We said some of the payroll expenses we know, the cleaning supplies, the disinfectant that we're going to make and store on site and use with other jurisdictions, our public awareness campaigns, doing convention center marketing, the rent mortgage program. But also, one thing I'd said before is that we have found that we have the ability for our fire payroll to be eligible. And so as we're looking at that, in actuality, our fire payroll will probably, not benefits, but just the payroll, will probably make up the remainder of our allotment. And so for making sure that we get our reimbursement, making sure that we meet our timeframes, that will probably be our last reimbursement. But within that context, we have these other expenditures too. And so what we will do is still have some project accounts where we are addressing these other expenses, but just know how the federal government and the state government's working is, let's get our reimbursement, let's make sure we get it in by the deadline, and if we can do that in one process with our fire payroll, then we'll go down that route. But we do want to kind of give you a heads up here to keep things simple, to address the required documentation, address our local funding partners, MESI, who's done some of our rent mortgage program, and to ensure we meet the December and even the local November deadlines. We will come back to you because we'll pay some of these things out of the general fund. So for instance, we've done the rent mortgage program that to make sure MESI gets their money quickly, and we've deployed that. You'll see that as an action item here in about 2 weeks. Same thing to make sure that we can get the convention center marketing program up and running before the December deadline. We will pay that out of the general fund as our proposal that we'll bring to you in 2 weeks. So we'll look to come and bring some of these spark expenditures to you, just so we can work on making sure that we address all of our reimbursements in a timely fashion with the documentation, and make sure that we're prepared to accept other money should it become available for different needs in our community. So you'll hear more about that in 2 weeks when we come back to you at the November 3rd meeting. And I'll stop there, and then I'll tell you about the new eviction prevention program. Is there any questions on the Spark approach for now?
So I'm thinking if we're going to take it out of the general fund and then you give that for reimbursement, that qualifies as a direct cost. Is that right? There was reimbursements for things that happened prior in the past few months, but anything we're using for the future, such as some of these other expenditures, the hand sanitizer machine and all of these things, those are direct cost, or is that also considered reimbursement?
It's also considered reimbursement. So
Okay.
the only thing that would be considered direct cost is really what they say are programs. And the only ones that we are looking at is the rent mortgage program and the CVB doing the convention marketing, our other public awareness campaigns.
Okay.
And so those are the program direct costs that sometimes other counties are paying directly to those entities for those services. We will not be doing that. We'll just be working through the general fund on that.
Okay. And just refresh my memory one more time about the platforms that we authorized for downtown.
Yep.
Is that our economic development funds, or is that also through the CARES Act funds?
We have got that slated right now as economic development funds, but yes, so since we're doing this different eligibility, we would look to shift that to the public general fund, the general fund.
We would essentially take the money out of the general fund and reimburse the economic development fund for that $250,000.
Okay, so they're not eligible for CARES funds?
They are, and this is where, when you're only allocated 2.9 million, and hypothetically, let's say you got $4 million in eligible expenses, you're going to take the 2.9 million,
Right.
and then you're going to look back and see how you want to distribute that to the 4 million that you're eligible for.
Okay,
Yeah, that's exactly right.
okay.
So,
I think I understand that. Go ahead.
we'll bring up some more of that in 2 weeks, but really it is, how do you look about just how the movement of funds are coming and going because of the reimbursement? But yes, those will be eligible expenses that, in our 2.9 million ledger, we've accounted for 250,000 for the
Okay,
platforms.
that's what
And
I
so
heard,
I
yeah.
think for your purposes, to make sure the commission understands, we're basically keeping contained to a $2.9 million ledger.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have different project accounts for that so we can document how that money was ultimately expended.
That was very specific because of COVID that we did that.
Yeah, yes, oh, definitely. And it supports your policy to use the public rights of way for this. And so, yeah, it very much covers that. So what came out new this week is the Kansas Eviction Prevention Program, KEPP as they're calling it. There will be information on your mail folder tomorrow. So you'll get these documents and information in your mail packet tomorrow. But this was funded through the CARES Act. It's authorized by Governor Kelly's Spark Task Force, and it will be administered by the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation. And it's to provide rental assistance to households that have missed one or more rental payments due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so really the basis of how it works is that landlords and tenants apply together. They do an online process. The landlord has to agree to take it and understand there's some arrears if they're in back owed pay or back owed rent or mortgage. I think it's saying rent. It's just saying rental payments, not mortgage. And then if the application is approved, the landlord receives the rental assistance funds directly from the KEPP program. And so by doing that, the approved tenants are eligible for a maximum of 9 months of assistance, not to exceed $5,000 per household. But if the landlord accepts and participates in the program, they waive late fees for the month's assistance that is awarded, and they have to agree not to undertake any eviction. And so there's information out on there at the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation website. And it outlines the program or any Spark websites from the governor's office. So this is actually very timely because we've already done our initial round of funding about $200,000 for local rent mortgage assistance here. And now we have a place to direct those who still, and they're still in need in our community. So now with this new state program, we have an avenue to direct people who are still looking for assistance to apply through this program, which is again part of the CARES funds, Spark funds. So I think that's a very worthwhile program. If people find that they need that service or need that support, they can go to the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation website. It's called the KEPP, the Kansas Eviction Prevention Program.
Okay, okay.
And like I said, we'll have information in your mail folders for tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Dennis.
That's it.
Okay.
Oh, and then also I will say, we do have the Recovery Task Force. The local Manhattan Area Recovery Task Force will be meeting on Thursday at 2 p.m. It will be on Channel 3 Cox. It will be on Facebook Live, and it will be on the city website. And our topics this week, we'll do some updates from the different entities. I know the school board will be meeting and considering their future class, in class, out of class schedule going forward. But we're also going to continue a conversation that we had at the last task force meeting 2 weeks ago, where we talked about some of the business impacts, really looking at for business, nonprofit, and education, how has the business model changed? And what are some of the short-term and long-term impacts? When you think about that, is it online? What is the service capacity? What's the staffing needs? And then looking forward, some of the conversation, when you look 6, 9, and 12 months out, what are local nonprofits, businesses, and education institutions seeing in terms of what are staffing, again, needs? What are the financial resources available for their businesses in 9 or 12 months? What are their needs? And so we'll have this larger community conversation, all centered around how can we accelerate Manhattan's recovery throughout this process. And then in 2 weeks, I should have for you the products or results for our public information campaign or awareness campaign, one about mask specific, but some other general awareness and COVID related measures that we would encourage our residents and citizens to follow. And so that will be unveiled within 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you, Dennis.
Dennis, I have a question. We have a lot of mobile home courts. Does lot rent qualify?
I'm not exactly sure the details on this program.
That's-
My assumption is yes, but
right.
they have to, as long as they can work with the landlord owner
Yeah.
and they agree,
Sure.
then it should be an eligible application.
I mean, I don't know how that's working, but anyway, I just wanted to be sure
Yeah, so again, I'd
Before I-
encourage people to go to that
before
housing.
I start talking about it. Okay, thanks.
Sounds good. Yes, Jason?
I failed to update you. We had a large gas line hit at 6th
yeah.
and Points this afternoon. Some of you may have seen the post. Scott French just texted me and said they did get that shut off, so there's no more leak. They're going back through the buildings right now to make sure everything's safe. We've had crews on site the entire time. A lot of places were evacuated, including the library. But like I said, our staff's going back through each of these buildings to make sure they're safe. So
Good.
just an update.
Thank you for that update. It was all over Facebook, so, and it was good that it was out there so quickly, too.
And Ron told me yesterday that you got this really wonderful check that someone delivered. Would you like to talk about that?
We did. Larry Fox with the Friends of Sunset Zoo and the Trust got a hold of us yesterday morning and asked if somebody would be around to sign off for a very large check. We knew the $1 million+ was coming, so yeah, 1.2 million. That's on top of this. I think they've already delivered about 600,000. So they're about 1.8 million into their 2.2 million dollar donation. So they've just done a phenomenal job, and obviously we have the 2 million sitting there from the sales tax. So we just talked through financing yesterday internally, and by the time we get underway and issue some notes next spring, there may not be a whole lot to issue because we're going to have a lot of cash on hand. So it's good news.
That's good financing.
And Brenda, was that a heavy load for you?
It was very stressful.
I said, did you make a special trip to the bank?
Seriously, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that update. Tammy, any updates? Okay. Jared? Okay, and Katie? Nothing. Brenda? Linda?
I did attend virtually the League of Kansas Municipalities Conference, as you referenced. Every year at the conference, they adopt a statement of municipal policy. And so I've attended several meetings virtually as they have developed those legislative priorities. And so they're at the annual meeting last week, they adopted it finally in time and preparation for to take to the legislature and individual legislators and testify at committee hearings and be ready. Some of the, I was going to say some of the, they, I don't know, priorities. The legislative priorities were retaining, the number one was retention or retaining home rule. And they're drafting a bill about property taxes. and they'll be working with individual legislators. They hope to repeal the tax lid. They know that's a pretty high hurdle. They're not so sure they'll get that, but it's on their list. Continuing internet sales collection, internet sales tax collections. They're still working on the dark store or alternative valuation process. They would like to get the legislature to change the budget timeline for cities. So what was in the there was a big change in timing, but the statute about when budgets have to be submitted is still there, and it's hard to plan that from August or July or August to the new, a year and a half later, practically, a year later before it ever happens. They're looking at emergency management and EMS and hospital funding, mental health, police reform, and special district consolidation. And I think they have a really good example, but for the most part, they just need some flexibility, especially when there's a township that it's been absorbed into a city. There's no reason for that township to exist anymore. But it takes a legislative action now for that to ever, for them to be able to solve that problem. So they would like to make that, somehow start working on making it easier. And they're not after big government organizations so much as just like water districts and those things that are hugely bureaucratic, and trying to make it simpler. Some of the bigger issues, property tax transparency, and they are going to set up a task force on that to make it so it moves along and doesn't get hung up. They are talking about police reform. That would be a result of the governor's task force on racial equity. And so there's federal reform and state reform that are where it could be some, and I can't tell you the specifics of either one of them necessarily at the moment. I just have my notes. Federal issues, of course, are funding and advance refunding of bonds. I don't understand that one, but, and the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid. Let's see. They reminded us about all the election deadlines, and anyway, it's always a refresher, is what I call it. Sometimes I know about some of the but it's good to hear it again. I'm the representative to the Flint Hills Regional Council, and last Friday we had a retreat. It was virtual. It was well attended. Just because we have some issues that are coming. We have a couple of several grants, and we have plans to do more. But we also have to have some match for if we were to get those grants. So we're brainstorming, trying to figure out how we can raise some money, and looking at the model of some of the other regional councils, and especially the North Central Regional Council, and then there's another one down at Wichita. And so we're looking at how they're raising revenue and for ideas. And because Christy Rodriguez and Jana Williams are relatively new, it's a good time to really dig into it. And I think and there are a lot of agreements. They're really cleaning house, because some of the old agreements, they can't exactly make sense. They can't read who signed it and some things like that. So that's a kind of a house cleaning that's taking place. Let's see. the big news, the big news is we had a law board meeting yesterday, and the RCPD was proposing to have to use 2,000 square feet of the new parking garage for a substation and moving the location to the parking garage, and another 2,000 square feet for a training facility. I think Wynn and I were particularly concerned about using that prime real estate when we could be using it for retail space and getting rent. So the law board ended up recommending to the county commission that just the substation space in the parking garage be go forward. The other thing we learned is that the shooting range is now, for all practical purposes, complete. They've had the first person certify using it, and the accompanying building is under construction, I think, and there was, so that should be finished. And they're going to have an open house in March or April, as whatever the official end of, when it's over. And can't think of anything else. When maybe you, law board wise, if you think of something?
Well, no, the other point on the law board, of course, I think, the commission had already sort of agreed that we weren't in line with that training facility, and Aggieville didn't like it, so, that was, I think, put to rest. But Dennis, Butler had a good point. He's got an issue with the EOC and dispatch, and we need to help him try to come up with a solution. And of course, I threw out a lot of ideas, just speaking to him in private. I still think intergovernmental action on that 9th grade center, eventually, there's a lot of space there that might solve a lot of problems on space between the county, the city, the police department. That's one to look at. He needs training room, and I'm thinking, we got this great education building at Sunset Zoo, and it's big enough to conduct the training if he just schedules it. We also have the depot, which hasn't been used much lately, and that's got some bad acoustics though. That's a given. But I think there's some other ways to do that, but we really need to provide what assistance we can to make that work, because that dispatch needs to be fixed and that EOC needs to be improved. And there's several ways to do that. And I think, the city's gonna work pretty well with the county and RCPD and the design of that station. Now some people are gonna say, well, I think they had a price tag up there about $200,000 or something. It was pretty pricey to do it, and they're saying, well, that's much more than the rent they're currently paying. But this isn't an apples to apples comparison. I mean, we're moving them there because we want the enhanced security in the garage. The other thing is that their facility is going to be upgraded. So they've got, restroom facilities and separate rooms, and I think the idea was to put some cameras in there so that they can view, parts of Aggieville and the garage, and so we're going to get some enhanced capabilities. And if the city doesn't charge them rent, which would be my intent, we pay for the facilities, there's no sense charging them rent. Yeah, if you were going to do an apples to apples comparison, it might take 30 years to recoup the cost just on that rent they're paying on that Aggieville substation. But I think the return on investment is well worth it. So I think we moved that part along, but we do need to put our heads together and find a solution for EOC and dispatch. That's for sure.
For 20 years payout, I know.
Yep.
That's what we were really talking about, was 20 years for the $400 and some $1,000 for the substation.
Yep.
And after that part, for sure be paid back.
Yeah.
But after 20 years, and we haven't
Yeah.
talked about it, so. I think that was about it for law board. And that's all. I can always talk about something.
That's it. Thank you, Linda. Wynn?
Yeah, I have a couple points. I wanted to to mention, the folks at the city staff that are doing that insider, publication, that thing's just excellent. Hope we keep up the work on that. And I know you started that initiative a couple years ago. And it's got just great information. I was curious if we could put a link on the city website to it. Because I couldn't really find a link, because I would like to, send people the link of the whole thing. I've taken pieces of it, but, it comes in email. And I think that's worthwhile, just to say, hey, folks, and then maybe you can get more to sign up. But that information is just stellar in there, so I appreciate the work of those of you doing that. And then the other thing, I really liked the e-scooter update that was in the memo. That was some pretty good information, which again, probably ought to be shared citywide. I think that's a pretty good success story. And especially the point that I remember a few months ago, we brought up the comment about, are they paying sales tax? Mm-hmm. And I guess they looked back into it, and starting this month, they started picking up sales tax, which means the city is getting a portion of that, I assume. And also, it looks like about $6,000 a month, roughly, going into the city university fund, which again is a plus. And with the addition of that being put on the reported app, I think, complaints on the e-scooters probably gone down. And I've seen several of them parked around. They seem to be used. So, it looks like a success story. So appreciate the work on that.
To follow that up, Jared, do they have a plan to keep a certain number of those available all winter, or is it shut down like the Green Apple bike? It just, at some point, they just pull them all off till it warms up again?
So they do. They decrease ridership as it gets colder. We were seeing a peak, actually up to about 450 scooters between the Manhattan community and K-State campus in late September, early October. Now that it's getting kind of colder, they're down to about 250 to 300 scooters a day, but still seeing a lot of ridership. They see in their communities that the leisure riding may go down a little bit in the winter, but people still would rather hop on a scooter to get from point A to point B than walk. So they still see a continued ridership in the winter, so you should expect to see that.
Okay, good, thanks.
Nothing? I see Aaron is up. Aaron, do you want to update us on anything? I think he's there. Hey, Aaron. You're still muted. Oh.
We didn't hear you, Aaron. We saw your lips move.
Oh,
There you
I
go.
just said I didn't have anything to report. I'm being quarantined. I'm pending my test results, so otherwise I'd be there.
Oh, heck.
And I am here to listen and partake virtually.
Thanks, Aaron. So I have a few updates. Let me see, back to my notes here. There's the community liaison group meeting for NBAF, and I missed the last meeting, but Trent Armbrust sent the minutes, and I told our city staff to put it in our mail folder so you can get an updated version of all the minutes. Just a few notes to point out. Tim Barr said that at the end of August, DHS has spent about $1.136 billion, or 91% of the budget that was allocated, about $5 million to $10 million per month. Construction is going well, although they had to slow down because of COVID. On-site worker population is about 150 per day. Current activities include equipment testing and landscaping. The team at NBAF, as far as everybody that they've employed so far, 37% are Kansas natives. Overall, employees claim 32 different home states. 52% are veterans, and 32% of those say they retired with more than 20 years of service. 66% of the survey respondents have a potential to serve NBAF for 20 plus years. 46% say they will live in Manhattan, and overall, they represent a total of 23 cities. And I believe Trent Armbrust and Marty Vanier were elected again to chair and vice chair of the committee. So once again, these will be in your mail folders to review. I don't know if they're in there right now or not. The chamber had their meeting today. Just a few updates from them. They are going to continue the leaders retreat, regional leaders retreat, January 14th and 15th here in Manhattan. That's a Thursday, Friday. They talked about their agenda. They're still working on the agenda. Some of it's regional, some of it's going to be community-oriented, some hybrid forms about economic development for the city of Manhattan as well as the region. Those are still in discussion. The annual board retreat will be at the Country Club, Manhattan Country Club. I don't have the date on that one. And they will be reviewing their strategic plan, which they haven't done in several years. I think it ended in 2018 or something like that. Talked about the sales tax. That's going well as far as the campaign. And let me see. Kevin Ingram from the Manhattan Christian College said their volleyball team, I think, are championships, and their soccer team is doing very well also. Linda Cook updated on homecoming weekend. That's going on this whole week. Their parade is a little different, where you're going to be driving by homes and seeing presentations and such instead of walking. Their online recruitment model is working well, so they're going to be doing more of that online recruiting. Out-of-state recruiting is what I meant to say. They had the highest retention rate. They hit a record of, I believe, 89% than they have in the past. That means more freshmen are choosing to stay as opposed to dropping out and going off somewhere else. So all things are going pretty well so far as those updates. Law board you already discussed. I did watch the law board meeting, and I think it went well, even though it was in Randolph. We were able to still see it on Facebook, and I'm glad Jason was there also to speak to the garage issue, as well as Dennis Cook was there. Every other week, or lately it's every other week, some community members as well as some K-State leadership, we usually have a meeting on Mondays just to brief each other real quickly on what's going on. And one of the things we wanted to point out is not to be complacent with the downward trend in our numbers and our surrounding areas. There's still a lot of spikes. And in one of those nursing homes, I believe in Newton, where a whole lot of them had passed away because of COVID. And Norton, sorry. And then students will leave for Thanksgiving, and K-State, of course, will not reopen till middle of January. But most of those students will be coming back, even though they don't have classes. They will be coming back to their apartments and residence here in Manhattan. So we will have still a lot of students amongst us, and we still want to follow all those precautions and not get complacent about it. They did discuss the graduation weekend, which is November 20th and 21st, I believe. Noah Lindquist, a K-State graduate, put out this parody on Beauty and the Beast, Wear a Mask. It's pretty good. It has over 3 million views and been picked up by a lot of folks. So I suggest just viewing it. Voting at the city-county meeting, Rich Varga presented to us, and he's going to continue to present everywhere he goes on voting. So they already sent out 11,000 mail-in ballots on October 14th. If you have not received yours yet, you still will, so don't worry. I received mine yesterday, and my husband received his today. You can drop it off at several ballot boxes that are around our community. There's one at West Loop, and there's one at the Riley County Courthouse, and I think there's about 8 more throughout the county. So just check on the website where there are, or you can go in and vote in person as long as you take the time to vote. ITGA, the International Town Gown Group we have with Kansas State University and some of our city commissioners, we have a meeting this Friday, so once that takes place, we'll update everybody on that. CARES funds, like I said, already a good update on that. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else. Future meetings, all kind of Zoom meetings going on still, so we'll see. And the public campaign will be out soon enough, so.
Just one other thought I'd share with you. I met with DMI in their board meeting last week, and the platforms are very exciting. A lot of positive comments coming from the platforms. They're only licensed through the end of the year. So we've asked DMI and the businesses in the business district to obviously watch and learn from their experiences, but we need to kind of make a decision probably in November or December about the future of those. I know there's been interest expressed to keep them. I need to talk to Rob and our potential snow removal operations. If they stay, you all would have to obviously consider how long, and legal would have to help us craft something. So December 31, our current agreements and the authority to cross those sidewalks with alcohol will go away. So that's something that just on your radar. As this experience is had, we're going to be taking feedback and looking for direction on how to move for 2021. If you've been down there, you've seen a lot of the businesses have invested in some furniture. A lot of them invested in additional studs to put lighting. So there's just some investments, and they all were donated heaters. So people are using those even on some chilly evenings. So again, just heads up, we'll be talking about it soon, but gain as much feedback as you can in the interim, and we'll have to make some decisions by the end of the year.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point. I think one of the things is, one, like you said, what kind of staff time is it taking to keep it up? And also see what RCPD feels about it, if it's changed anything around the dynamics of what's going on downtown. We see the excitement, but we're not nearly as involved as everybody else.
I think one of my reservations was the having alcohol outside and not being able to control that like on an inside. But so I'm interested in those experiences as we think. I know that it was our intention to continue on and get them back out again in the spring. And so I'm, assuming there's no big issue. That's what I would intend to do.
Yeah, there just may be some interest from the businesses to keep them. The random, 50, 55 degree day in January and February, and then March, it obviously starts to warm up. There may be a desire to keep them, but there's some logistical issues we need to talk through, some experiences people need to have, and give us the feedback. And it's just a key decision that'll need to be made. So I just wanted to get it on your plate.
Yeah, I think it's really good to keep them. I think somebody had brought up about, homeless folks or something like that, or some kind of graffiti. If we can just keep track of data and what's working and what else we need to improve. Ultimately, we want our businesses to be successful. And also if it's that we had some concerns about parking, and if any of the other surrounding businesses feel like it has impacted their business in a negative manner, is something we need to know as well. So I guess that's it for briefing, unless there's more. So we'll take a 15-minute break and we'll come back at 7. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Today is Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. It is 7 o'clock, and we are starting our City Commission meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We had public comments and written prior to our meeting, if you emailed them, on the consent agenda items or any of the other items. If you choose to speak this evening, we have a protocol. Each speaker gets 5 minutes to speak. State your name and address clearly for the record so that we have an idea who's speaking. This evening we have 4 proclamations. We probably have more proclamations than we do on our general agenda items this evening, which is always a good thing. So I'm glad all of you made time to attend our meetings, and we are thrilled to be giving these proclamations tonight. Our first one is for October 18th through the 24th, the Pilot International Founders Week. Jennifer Stewart, president of the Manhattan Pilot Club, will be via Zoom, I'm thinking, right? Yes, I see her, to receive the proclamation. Brenda Wolf will be reading the proclamation this evening.
Whereas Pilot International was founded in Macon, Georgia in 1921, when a group of civic-minded business leaders established an international service organization, and the founding members combined their diverse talents in friendship and service to improve the quality of life in communities throughout the world. Members of Pilot International strive to further the organization's humanitarian efforts through scholarships, grants to support research, education, and community caregiving programs, and is committed to service in areas of brain safety and health and supporting those who care for others. Pilot International partners with Project Lifesaver and other respected service organizations to promote awareness for injury prevention and care of those in need. Pilot International fosters volunteerism in more than 6,500 young people worldwide through its sponsorship of Anchor and Compass Clubs. Therefore, it is fitting that the achievements and contributions of this worldwide organization, its clubs, and members be recognized on their anniversary by proclaiming October 18th through the October 24th, 2020 as Pilot International Founders Week.
Thank you, Brenda. Jennifer, would you like to say a few words this evening?
Just a very short, little, brief statement that I have. So as the president of the Pilot Club of Manhattan, I want to thank you for sharing this proclamation. Pilot International, as you said, is committed to promoting brain safety and health, and there are 2 other clubs in Manhattan that help support this mission: Sunflower Pilot Club and the Little Apple Pilot Club. And we just want to say thank you for celebrating this occasion with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Brenda. Our next proclamation is for Buddy Poppies and Dan Watkins, Commander, Robert Murphy, Senior Vice Commander, Chris Dunham, Junior Vice Commander, and Post Adjunct, veterans of the Foreign Wars, Post 1786, Vicki Russell, Junior Vice, and Jeannie Murphy, Auxiliary Chaplain, VFW Auxiliary, and Betty Dunham will be present to receive the proclamation this evening. Brenda, would you please read the proclamation?
Whereas the annual sale of Buddy Poppies by the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States has been officially recognized and endorsed by governmental leaders since 1922, and the basic purpose of the annual sale of Buddy Poppies by the Veterans of Foreign Wars is eloquently reflected in the desire to honor the dead by helping the living. VFW Buddy Poppies are assembled by disabled veterans, and the proceeds of this worthy fundraising campaign are used exclusively for the benefit of disabled and needy veterans and the widows and orphans of deceased veterans. Now therefore, Yusha Reddy, Mayor of the City of Manhattan, Kansas, does hereby urge the citizens of this community to recognize the merits of this cause by contributing generously to its support through donations towards the Buddy Poppy Drive on October 24th, 2020, the day set aside for the distribution of these symbols of appreciation for the sacrifices of our honored dead.
Thank you, Brenda. Would all of you like to come up and say a few words? I know we're very grateful that you're here this evening, and I believe Commissioner Butler got us our poppies already, so.
Yes, I'm Dan Watkins. I am the Manhattan VFW Post Commander since 2018, and also this year I was elected as District Commander of District 4 Department of Kansas. That makes me responsible for 19 more posts other than Manhattan. And the reason I bring this to your attention is we are actually going to be the first ones in our district that are going to be doing a Buddy Poppy awareness, we like to call it, donation. And we're going to have it at Hy-Vee, which is the only place we're going to have it. It's going to be this Saturday. We're going to start at 8 and we're going to do it until 4 o'clock. With that being said, I know there's several people watching from all over the county and probably some other cities. When you see your VFW members out there with their poppies, I ask you to stop and get one and talk to them. Donations are optional. You don't have to donate anything, but each penny that you give goes into our relief fund. And what that relief fund is for, it's to help veterans in time of need. Might help them pay their rent, it might help, you know, electricity, things like that. It's an emergent type of thing, and it also helps members of veterans' families. So it's a really good thing, and we're hoping to see everybody out there. And also, we're gonna have our post race car out there, our midget. So if you want to take some pictures with the car, come on out, and we'll see everybody out there on Saturday. Thank you again.
Sounds very good. Thank you very much. And we already got them, so. Did you
Just
want
to say that he has more poppies over there for
Yes.
anyone.
Yes,
we do.
Anyone in the room that wants to get their poppy.
Give them a buck. Yeah, please donate.
We can't pass the hat.
Thank you so much for being here this evening. Our next proclamation is for World Polio Day, August 24th, 2020. Crystal Bryant Kearns, President of the Konza Rotary Club, and Rebecca Gould, President of the Manhattan Rotary Club, are present today to receive the proclamation, and Brenda Wolf will read the proclamation out loud.
Whereas Rotary International, founded on February 23, 1905 in Chicago, Illinois, is the world's first and one of the largest nonprofit service organizations. There are over 1.2 million Rotary Club members comprised of professional and business leaders in over 35,000 clubs in 200 countries and geographic areas. The Rotary motto, "Service Above Self," inspires members to provide humanitarian service, encourage high ethical standards, and promote goodwill and peace in the world. Rotary in 1985 launched Polio Plus and spearheaded the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, which today includes the World Health Organization, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, UNICEF, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to immunize the children of the world against polio. Polio cases have dropped by 99.9% since 1988, and the world stands on the threshold of eradicating the disease. To date, Rotary has contributed more than $1.7 billion and countless volunteer hours to the protection of more than 2 billion children in 122 countries, and is currently working to raise an additional $150 million, which, if realized, will be tripled by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for a total of up to $450 million over the next 3 years. These efforts are providing much-needed operational support, medical personnel, laboratory equipment, and educational materials for health workers and parents. Now, therefore, Yusha Reddy, Mayor of the City of Manhattan, Kansas, does hereby proclaim October 24th as World Polio Day and encourage all citizens to join the mayor and the Rotary International in the fight for a polio-free world.
Thank you, Brenda. And if Rebecca and Crystal would like to come up and say a few words, that would be great. And we have a few Rotarians up here as well. Commissioner Morris, I think Commissioner Hattisall and I belong to the morning one, and Commissioner belongs to the noon one. So we're thrilled to see you here this evening.
And we have several in the room as well.
In the room.
Well, there we go. Yes, I see that. They're here with dual purposes tonight.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the proclamation. As the proclamation stated, Rotary has been working on eradicating polio for over 40 years, and we have lots of support, especially from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Polio remains endemic in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and until the virus transmission is interrupted in these countries, all of our countries remain at risk.
So we are this close to ending polio, and so some might ask, why this week? We want to have one day, one focus. It's the closest to the birthday of Jonas Salk, who was the developer of the first successful polio vaccination. So in honor of that, this week, this Friday, the Konzo Morning Club has sold several boxes of donuts, along with Hy-Vee, who has partnered with us. And once those funds are matched, this community has raised over $22,000, which is incredible, to end polio worldwide. In addition to that, the Noon Club has a fundraiser as well.
The Noon Club at the Holiday Inn at campus is going to park a 1966 beautiful maroon Mustang that belongs to Dr. Beth Unger, and we're going to collect change, pennies for polio, or loose change for polio, whatever people have. Our goal is $2,000, and again, it will be matched by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So come out 9 to 11 on Saturday, October 24th.
All right,
Thank
great.
you.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Did you want to say something,
I was
Linda?
just going to say, between the two Rotary clubs, there are 280 members here in our community. And I really think we make a difference with the volunteer service that we do. Seems like it's endless all the time.
That's what's great about it.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it wonderful? And you meet so many people and become familiar with the different events and organizations in the community. It's very rewarding.
Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Our last proclamation is for Veterans Day, November 11th, 2020. Chuck Sexton, President of the Flint Hills Veterans Coalition, is present to receive the proclamation. And Brenda Wolf will once again read the Veterans Day proclamation.
Whereas Veterans Day has its origins in the November 11th, 1918 armistice, which brought World War I to a conclusion, and the Allied victory of World War I affirmed the strength of great nations acting together for high purposes. Veterans Day continues to be celebrated and commemorated with solemn observances in honor of all Americans who have served their country in times of war and conflict, and has become a significant part of our American heritage as we recognize the millions of our citizens whose military service has a profound effect on history. The courage, honor, sacrifice, and dedication which veterans of the United States Armed Forces have displayed in the cause of justice, freedom, and democracy are most worthy of recognition. Now therefore, use your ready, Mayor of the City of Manhattan, Kansas, does hereby call upon all citizens to commend America's veterans and observe Monday, November 11th, 2020 as Veterans Day, and ask that the day be observed with appropriate ceremonies in honor of those who have served to preserve our principles of justice, freedom, and democracy.
Thank you, Brenda. Would you like to come on up and receive it? I know you have several folks here from the Flint Hills Veterans Coalition. Yes, and please introduce them all.
Well,
We are glad they're here this evening.
This is a great opportunity. My name's Chuck Sexton, and I have Crystal and Chris and Janet and Melody with me today. And on behalf of all the veterans, Dan, you already had your moment in the sun. Dan, on behalf of all the veterans in the community, I am honored to receive this from this community. This is why Manhattan is such a great place to live. It's because of the things that you do and the nice words that were said and what you do for your veterans here. And I'm also honored to let you know that we're one of the few places in the United States this year where we've worked hard together as both a county and a city to actually execute a safe, COVID-free, COVID-safe parade. And with your help, with the blessings of the community as well as the good Lord, we're going to execute that here on Veterans Day, the 11th of November. And I know it's not been an easy time this year, but we're going to show them how it's done. So on behalf of all of our veterans here, and as well as the people here, thank you very much for the proclamation.
Thank you. We are thrilled like you're here. Mark, yes.
Are you guys going to have the breakfast at the Legion this year?
Absolutely. There's a Legion breakfast this year as well. It's going to be takeout primarily, but there's some spaces inside that are available for those that are able, as long as we can keep that minimum number inside the building to reduce the risk of spreading.
So there is an option to take out?
Yeah, there
Okay.
sure is, as it stands right now. But we have to be flexible this year. This is a kind of a tough time to be around. But once again, it's going to be the parade, it's going to be the breakfast, and the ceremony afterwards, which is going to be Facebook Live as well as simulcast on K-Man.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
working so hard on this. And I believe the proclamation is there, the hard copy.
I think Dan probably took it.
Okay, terrific. I just didn't want you to miss
Did you take our
it.
proclamation, Dan?
Yep.
No. He was put on the carpet.
There we go.
What? Oh,
Yes.
no, there's no other one up there. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate everything you're doing. All right, thank you. I think we might have a hard copy somewhere for you. With that, we'll go on to commissioner comments. Are there any commissioner comments? We'll start with Commissioner Butler.
Yeah, just want to make one comment. I've gotten a couple of emails and people concerned about why aren't some areas in Parks and Rec parks being mowed. And if you've checked some of the publications that have been put out, it's because Parks and Rec is doing a pocket pollinator program. And the idea there is to plant the right kinds of vegetation that will support things like monarch butterflies, insects, various birds. And that's great for the environment. But the other outstanding benefit is it cuts down the amount of space that we have to mow and saves us money and cost and maintenance and time. So I think it's an outstanding program. I think a survey was sent out on it, this week that you might have gotten in email, and you can make comments on it. But I think that's an outstanding initiative by Parks and Rec, and I think it's going to work out real well for the city.
I agree, thank you. Commissioner Hattasol? Commissioner Morris?
Nothing.
Okay.
Vote.
Yeah, but Commissioner Estabrook, any commissioner comments?
Wish I could be there. I'm observing a quarantine while my test comes back. I've been ill. It was great to hear from so many veterans organizations, and I look forward to the events coming up for Veterans Day. I don't have anything else. I'll be listening in.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, please vote if you haven't already. You have until November 3rd, whether it's mail-in, in person. There's a ballot box placed around the county. Please visit Riley County Elections website, and there's lots of information there, or call them or email them if you are not sure. You can still put out an application for a mail-in ballot by October 27th. So take advantage of that. Absolutely an important election, as is every election. We hope you are enjoying the platforms downtown. What we're seeing used, and everybody's excited about it, so we're thrilled to make that happen. And again, We want you to enjoy what we have in Manhattan and trying to think of as many ways as possible for you to support our local businesses and enjoy our restaurants. And they still have the option of carry out in most of these places as well. There's still Spooktacular going on at the zoo, and I think, please get on the website and see how that's happening. I think there's some modifications that had to be made. There is a lot going on, and we want you to take advantage of everything that's happening in our community.
Mayor, I might add that the Friends of the Zoo and the Zoo Trust have just delivered a check for $1.2 million, a successful fundraising that they have been conducting. They gave, I think Jason said, $600,000 previously, and there's just another $200,000-300,000 until they've met their commitment. And so the project is a go as far as Jason and the city administration is concerned. So thankful to the zoo effort. And in the future, you'll see that what a difference it makes. And we'll be, I don't know, unveiling that next year when it's finished. So we're excited about that. I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledged something as major as that. That is just huge for us, and a new project coming.
Exactly, a good private-public collaboration with the Asian Expedition. With that said, we'll move on to our consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda are those of routine and housekeeping nature, or those items which have previously been reviewed by the City Commission. A commissioner may request an item be moved to the end of the general agenda. Does the commission have any questions or comments on the consent agenda items?
I want to mention just two, item H is support for Whoville and the lighting in Blue Earth Plaza, which I like to see that there. And of course, this year, it's going to be a virtual event. There's not going to be any special events down there like happened in years past. But the music will be there, the trees will be there, the lights will be there, and Parks and Rec always puts in a little bit of help there on the electric and a few other things, and I think that's greatly appreciated. Though I think everybody needs to understand that, the majority of the cost of that, in fact, the lion's share, that's all donated. And you can go to the Whoville site and kick in a couple bucks if you have time. It would definitely help, because the hospitality industry that generally supports that, as you know, is not doing that well this year because of the coronavirus issue. So if you got time to help out a little bit on that, it would be greatly appreciated. And then the other item is item E, and that has to do with the charter ordinance, and it involved the amount of money the city manager can kick out, and I don't really have a problem with 80% of it. I voted no last time. I'll vote no again, simply because I would prefer this contracting thing to be best value, and don't like the city's language on that.
Okay, sounds good, thank you. Other commissioner comments on consent agenda?
I think it'd be important for for someone, Jason, perhaps you or Dennis, to speak to the item G and the change that's going to happen there.
For the user pay fee.
Because it's going to, there's going to be a change that people will notice in their billing for city utilities.
You read it?
Or somebody else.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to jump in there, Commissioner. We currently use Click2Gov, which is part of our utility billing platform. We're going to shift to the Paymentus platform, so it will be a little bit of a different look and feel. Probably one of the more major changes will be just the tax that will be associated, or the fee associated with using your credit card. So we'd like to bring that to everybody's attention. Yeah. In the past, we haven't charged for this. It's been something we've absorbed. It'll be now added to your bill. So it'll be passed along to each of our customers, and that will look different on their bill.
Right, thank you. Other commissioner comments or questions? Any public comment on the consent agenda items? Okay, and I don't believe we received any via email, did we? Okay, thank you. If there's, please make a motion for the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a
Second.
second? Okay. Brenda, please call the roll.
Mayor Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes, except item E, which is no.
Commissioner Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes?
Commissioner Estabrook.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0 with the exception of item E, which carries 4-1.
Thank you. Our first, we have 3 public hearings this evening. Our first one is to consider vacating a utility easement for South 3rd Street and Fort Riley Boulevard, VA 2004. Our presenter is Rob Ott, our Director of Public Works this evening, or Brian Johnson.
Or me, yes. We're going to the bullpen tonight. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Brian Johnson, City Engineer. As the Mayor just alluded to, Public Works has a triple play for you tonight. I have 2 vacate easements, and then Randy's going to follow it up with some KDHE loan information. The first of those vacates is down on 3rd and Fort Riley Boulevard, and to get you orientated, north is up. Fort Riley Boulevard runs east and west. This is Union Pacific tracks here. Casey's has inquired about building a convenience store on this lot. Part of that inquiry, there is an old sanitary sewer utility easement only, so only for sanitary sewer. And in our background and research, we found that this alley that was actually part of the original plat of Manhattan was vacated in 1948. And what it was vacated for, we're not positive. What we found was that when they vacated that alley, they put a sanitary sewer utility easement there. So at one point, somebody thought that they were going to run sanitary sewer up that abandoned alleyway. There's no utility in that alleyway. There's no sanitary sewer in that alleyway. We have this rerouted 3rd Street system, has plenty of capacity to intercept anything that Casey's is going to send our way. And they have asked us to vacate it. Again, no utilities currently in the easement. All utilities that we have asked have responded that they don't have anything in there, and they shouldn't because it's sanitary sewer only. All the responses have supported the vacation. There's no future plan to put a utility there. So with that, I would entertain the motion that no private rights have been injured or endangered by such vacation. And I would stand for questions.
Thank you, Brian. I believe there was one public comment, and I think it was in favor of supporting this request. Other commissioner comments or questions for Brian?
I just have a question, Commissioner Hattasol. Could you put the picture of the?
Sure.
So, that land to the east of that, there's no access to that anywhere. The Casey's is just by on the red part.
That's correct.
And so the rest of that land is gonna be suitable only for yard signs and stuff apparently, because there's no access off of the Fort Riley Boulevard.
Yeah, and I talked to an attorney that's representing that easterly lot today. There is an agreement in the works, or an agreement that has been signed between Casey's and that lot to the east for some sort of temporary access. That's a private party agreement between those two. The city isn't, privy to that information, but you are correct. There is no legally defined access. We won't let them have access off Fort Riley Boulevard.
Right, I didn't figure so. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I will, since this is a public hearing, I will open it up for, public hearing is now open. Okay, seeing none, I will close public hearing. Are there any other commissioner comments? If not, is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that we find no private rights will be injured or endangered by the proposed vacation, and that the public will suffer no loss or inconvenience thereby, and approve ordinance number 7504, vacating a utility easement for South 3rd Street and Fort Riley Boulevard.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Brenda, please call the roll.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes?
Commissioner Estabrook,
Yes.
Mayor Reddy.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank People are excited about Casey's, so that's good. Our next public hearing this evening is to consider vacating a utility easement for Jardine right-of-way, VA 2005. Presenter again is Brian Johnson.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Again, Brian Johnson, City Engineer. This is the second public hearing vacating utility easement on University Drive. So this is the original plat from Campus Acres Edition number 5, platted in 1958. And apparently the idea at that time were these would be 1+ acre kind of semi-residential, semi-country kind of feel lots, pretty large lots. Jardine Street or Jardine Drive was platted as a through street at that time, and Jardine at that time was meant to go from Denison over to Dickens. As time has gone on, Jardine's been vacated from the east to the west. This would be the last piece that has yet to be vacated. So again, platted 1958, generally 1+ acre large lots. You can see there's only about 6 or 7 lots shown on the plat. Jardine right-of-way was originally vacated in 2006. And when it was vacated at that point, all 60 feet was vacated with a utility easement over the top of it. And on the north half, we do have utilities. We've got Jardine Trail, we've got lighting, we've got water, natural gas, and electric on the north half. The south 30 feet, nothing's been put in there. There's no utilities in there. And the main reason why is because everything to the east has already been vacated, so those utilities all have to be on that north 30 feet. We received a request from an applicant that owns that house there. They've asked us to vacate that south 30 feet because they want to put a garage on it. So here's an aerial of it. The Jardine right-of-way is in the red box here. Everything we have is in the north 30 feet. What they're asking for is the south 30, this black box here. Again, everything to the east has already been vacated, so there's no chance of utilities being in there at some point in the future. We have reached out to all the utilities. They have signed a waiver or a release. They said that they don't anticipate ever having utilities in that 30 feet, and they all support the vacation request. So again, with that, find that no private rights have been injured or endangered by such vacation. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Brian. And there weren't any comments via email. So are there questions and comments? Yes.
There it is. So the lot line for the owner of that property, the lot line would go all the way up to the top red line?
It already does.
Okay, so they already owns the land and everything, they just want to...
He can't build anything on it because it's got a utility easement over the top.
Okay.
All the utilities are in the north 30, there's nothing in the south 30. He's requested vacation so that he wants to build a garage. In fact, he's already applied for a building permit and it's waiting for a utility vacation.
Very good, thanks.
And the reason that a homeowner has the responsibility to maintain and mow and
Pay property tax, maintain, mow.
that 30 feet
Yep.
all along.
Yep.
And so and because has no future use, it makes sense.
Correct.
So would we expect every homeowner along that easement there to
Everybody to
want
the
to
east
add it?
already has asked that and they've been granted that.
Okay.
This last block is the last block that has not.
This is the last one?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yep.
something? Okay.
And this lot over here, we have had discussions with this homeowner in the past. We actually have a easement for drainage and storm sewer to access the Chase Pond over here and clean it. So they've asked us before if we would vacate it. We've told them no because we need access into there.
Okay.
But
So
this would
that
be-
one you're not willing to give up?
Yeah, because we need access. The Chase Pond sits right back here.
Okay. Right.
And we need access to that pond for cleaning and maintenance.
Thank you, I appreciate, those were my questions as I thought through it.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
I will open it up for the public hearing. Seeing none, I will close public hearing, and once again, we did not receive anything via email either. With that said, if there is no more discussion, please make a motion.
Mayor, I move that, did I find it? That the city commission find that no private rights will be injured or endangered by the proposed vacation, and that the public will suffer no loss or inconvenience thereby, and approve ordinance number 7505, vacating a utility easement for Jardine Drive right-of-way, VA 2005.
Commissioner Butler, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hassel,
Yes.
Commissioner Estabrook,
Yes.
Mayor Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Our last item is, I think, a public hearing as well. Consider KDHE loan application for the water treatment plant lime sludge basin improvements, SM 1814, WA 1907, CIP number WA 168P. Our presenter this evening is Randy DeWitt, our Assistant Director of Public Works for Water and Wastewater. Good evening, Randy.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. As stated, this is a public hearing for a KDHE loan application. Public hearing and a resolution is a prerequisite for any KDHE loan application, so that's why we're here today. Really, I intended this presentation to be more informational because this is a project that, it's a costly project, but it really hasn't been discussed publicly or in front of the commission previously. So really, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on the lagoons themselves, why we're here today, and then with us today is Olson Associates, our consultant for this project, as well as many other projects that are associated with other projects in this area, including the levee and stormwater projects. Mike Millius is the project manager for Olson. He'll come up here and help me present here in a little bit. But like I said, just wanted to give you a little bit of a background, and Olson will give you some of the finer details of the project and some of the KDHE regulations that we're really working on to complete this project. So an aerial image of the site and the lagoons. This is north is to the left in this image. So we're here in the area of our water treatment plant here at 3rd Street and Tuttle Creek Boulevard. Our 4 lime sludge lagoon pits are just east of Tuttle Creek Boulevard in the old Blue River channel. Also next to the lime sludge lagoons are this north TCB drainage ditch, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and also the training levee, which is now a trail. And then, of course, Parker Hannafin and Hayes. So that's where we're at. So the existing 4 lagoons were constructed around 1970, and the purpose of these lagoons are essentially to dry the lime sludge, which is a byproduct of our water treatment process. We have obviously a lime softening plant. So that sludge is allowed to settle and dry over time, and the supernatant clear water is on top, and we allow that supernatant to be drawn off the lagoons and they're discharged to the drainage channel. Eventually, as needed, that dried sludge is removed, and typically it is disposed of as quarry fill at one of the local quarries. One of the reasons that, I guess, the genesis of this project, I'll throw him under the bus if I can, but really this all started with the stormwater project for the TCB North ditch improvements. I'm going to go back a little bit and talk about some of the issues we have with the lagoons associated with that drainage channel. So I don't know a lot about the stormwater master plan. I know that one of the major projects is to improve this drainage channel because it is a conveyance point between the Bertrand Box, which captures Campus Creek, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but that Bertrand Box flows through the plant underground across Tuttle Creek Boulevard and discharges at this point. Takes a couple sharp turns, and eventually it makes its way over to Hayes Encasement and the outlet through the levee, which is, you probably know well about. It's been presented to you as a part of the levee for this project. During significant rain events, we experience some issues where the stormwater will come out of that channel, and it will go into the lagoons and out of the lagoons and cause quite a bit of damage through erosion of the berms or erosion around some of the outlets to the lagoons, and Also, it will take a lot of the lime sludge out of the lagoons with it and into the ditch and eventually into Blue River and Kansas River. So because of that, the stormwater project includes improvements to that ditch, including widening it, and updating the alignment to allow us to have an increased capacity to convey that stormwater, hopefully without entering into the pits. Can't really see this too well on the screen, but this is a cross-section of the existing lagoons and ditch, as well as the proposed improvements. So this area here is the lime sludge storage. The berm for the lagoons is also the west bank for the ditch. And of course, you got the ditch right here and the trail and training levee. The improvements to the drainage channel, like I said, consists of widening that channel, which necessitates the moving of that berm over about 40 feet. And they're also going to raise the berm, so the water elevation in the storm channel hopefully will not come into the lagoons. Another aerial that kind of shows the stormwater project, and this represents the new alignment of the ditch, taking out a lot of those turns, which ultimately are probably one of the main reasons that we get a lot of stormwater into the lagoons. It's hard for that stormwater to make those turns. You can see this dark line, it represents the new exterior berms of the lagoons. And one of the things that this is obviously going to do is going to decrease the square footage, the footprint and the storage volume of the lagoons, which we're fine with because we really don't need the amount of storage that we have now. We typically only use 3 of the 4 lagoons, so we're okay if we lose some of that volume. Unfortunately, changing those lagoons really is a change in our treatment facilities. And when we do that, it necessitates us to talk with KDHE and make sure they're okay with it. Typically, any change in our treatment process, they're going to review it, approve it. And so when we reached out to make that connection, unfortunately, we got some bad news in response. So talk a little bit about some KDHE regulatory compliance issues. Unfortunately, what we found out is that the discharges from those lagoons, either the supernatant or when the stormwater washes out sludge, technically it's an illegal discharge. So it's an unpermitted discharge under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which is essentially the permitting system under the Clean Water Act. We have a permit for the wastewater plant, we have a permit for the stormwater system. Dictates, what our treatment processes are and the permit regulations that we have to meet. And so the discharges from the lagoons are unpermitted discharges. The reason is that water has high alkalinity, high pH, and a lot of suspended solids. You can imagine, you kind of see a picture of what that water looks like. That's actually very murky. Usually the water that comes off of this is very clear, but certain site conditions will mean that discharge is a little murky. So we essentially have, we worked with Olson, worked a little bit with Carollo Engineers, who is our designer for the wastewater treatment plant, at least its current version. And we talked about options for compliance, and there's really 3 major options. The first one is not a realistic option, but it is to actually permit the discharge. So we would get a new NPDES permit. Unfortunately, that would require some sort of treatment system. Really not feasible to put a treatment system on this site. It's in the floodplain, or not in the floodplain, but yeah, it is in the floodplain. And it's cost prohibitive. Second option would be to eliminate the discharge. We could technically pump that back to the water treatment plant through the raw water supply. But the third option is our preferred option, and that is to eliminate the discharge, and then we would convey that supernatant to the sanitary sewer system for treatment at the wastewater treatment plant. And the reason that is preferred is because our plant in its current state is a BNR plant, a biological nutrient removal plant, to remove phosphorus, nitrogen, ammonia, etc. The alkalinity in the discharge from the lime sludge is actually beneficial to that process. So we've worked with Carollo a little bit. They're part of the design team. of the preliminary engineering report that's going to talk to why this is actually beneficial to the wastewater treatment plant. And then that, of course, will be submitted to KDHE. So that's the reasons why we opted for number 3 to pursue as a solution. Again, it's the most cost-effective solution as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mike Milius. He's going to talk a little bit more about some lagoon regs, and I'll come back a little bit later and talk about timeline and KDHE loan applications. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Mike Milius with Olson. As Randy walked through this, I mean, there are some standards now that we have to come up to in regards to the sludge lagoon. Realistically, there's really one key piece of that, and it's really the aspect of a liner system. Right now, based on the current information, there is no liner system in that lagoon, so that's the biggest thing, to make sure that this water cannot easily get down to the groundwater that's below it. With that said, we're, as part of this project, doing some work in regards to geotechnical work, in regards to whether or not we can modify the soils with some bentonite or some other material to achieve that permeability, or whether we need to go to some other synthetic liner or other things. So that's kind of the key piece as we're moving forward in regards to that. Here. With that said, we have looked at the potential for beneficial reuse of this sludge. Good, bad, or indifferent, there's not a lot of good options out there or any green solutions in the big picture of this. We looked at the aspect of, can we dewater at the plant site, totally eliminate the lagoons? That is that has got a very significant cost and long-term operational costs associated with it, so really it's cost prohibitive. And also we looked at the aspect of, can we make them bigger to get the drier sludge? Because right now we're hauling, a lot of this is when we do haul it to the quarry for beneficial fill, it is still fairly wet, so we're hauling water. Can we eliminate that? And with the area that we have, we cannot really expand it dramatically to get a better drying conditions, so it's really not a solid option as we move forward. So we're going to walk you through really 3 conceptual options that we have looked at. We have sat down with staff. We had a kickoff meeting in this chamber a couple weeks ago and started looking at the different options. All 3 of these options have some commonalities in them. First of all is all of them got to meet the industrial requirements for KDHE as far as the system itself. As Randy talked about, the supernatant collection realistically will be sent to a pump station and then discharged over to the wastewater treatment plant. On all these scenarios, the volumes is, yes, being reduced because of the realignment of the channel, but for all of these, we've got plenty of storage for both now and in the future for the water treatment plant. Also, the operational changes with your upgrade, they're using less limes, so we have less solids to get rid of, so that's a good thing. As we look at this, really these are going to be evaluated on really 3 key pieces, one of which is the capital cost. The second piece is the ongoing operation and maintenance cost, that clean out piece of the equation. And then the third piece is what flexibility can we give the operations staff out there. So this is really concept 1. It's basically very similar to the aerial that you had seen earlier from Randy. We're basically just going to leave the lagoons alone, modify some inlet structures, and basically rework the liners inside of the lagoons themselves. The configuration really doesn't change. Like I said earlier, we're working on the aspect of what liner system is the most cost effective, and there really be minimal other improvements to the lagoons. Realistically, the conceptual cost of this is anywhere between $2 and $4 million, and it's really going to depend upon that geotechnical findings out there, what we have to do to that soil, if we have to amend it, or whether we have to go to a geosynthetic clay liner or something like that. Concept number 2 is really to keep the same configuration also, but start looking at the aspect of a concrete liner. The reason that we feel we want to look at that option is from a cleanout standpoint, that's going to make our cleanout cost hopefully a little less significant. Also allows us a lot more flexibility in regards to that cleanout. If we do put an earth and clay liner in the bottom of that, we have to be very careful when we are doing that cleanout, because right now we are getting down in there with trucks and equipment, and we do not want to ruin our liner. So there'll actually be a protective cover over the top of that. With the option of concrete, that is no longer needed. Good, bad, or indifferent conceptually, please keep in mind these are very conceptual costs that will get more refined, but we're in the neighborhood of $5 to $6 million. Concept 3 is really taking concept 2 and adding some additional dividers in there to where realistically we split this into 8 cells. Again, it allows more flexibility. It would require some repiping and some other changes. We do have a larger supernatant collection system, but it definitely increases the flexibility and gives us the opportunity to let the cells sit for a longer period of time so that we can get as much water off of them as we can. We don't really want to haul water. So that's really the goal of this. Again, these are conceptual estimates, but we're adding basically an additional $500,000 at a conceptual level to this. So that's why we want to look at it. Again, these are all high-level conceptual options. With that, I'll turn it back over to Randy to walk through the timeline, and we'll be here to answer any questions.
Okay, so we have already submitted a pre-application to KDHE, and that was approved earlier this year. That pre-application was for an amount of $3 million. At that time, we were very early on in looking at the concepts. So that was for $3 million. The intent after this public hearing is to submit a loan application. Deadline is November 17th. The current application I'm proposing is for $3.5 million, based on what we think would be the minimum project for that option 1, or potentially option 2. We'll work with Olson to complete a requisite alternatives analysis or preliminary engineering report, which is required to KDHE. Hopefully that'll be done in December, and ideally we would have a loan agreement in front of us early next year in 2021 for the commission to approve. Really, design for this project will happen in the first half of next year. Final design will potentially be done by June. But the important thing really to talk about here is the construction timeline. The construction for this project is heavily dependent on the levee project. And the CIP construction really isn't scheduled until 2023. The levee project, the gate well structure, it's a betterment project, casement haze, all come before the drainage channel project. And we can't really do the levee or the lagoon project until that drainage ditch project happens. So it's essentially last in line. But we're doing everything we can to get this thing designed and shovel ready for many reasons. But we never know if there's going to be some potential funding out there for projects like this. But we're going to get ready. We're going to have this project designed and ready to go. We do have a temporary system in place that we've designed and built in-house at the existing lagoons that helps us to meet KDHE's requirement to cease the discharge. So we've been working on that for about the last 60 days. It's basically a temporary pump station and a collection system. So we've had a head contractor helping us out. So we're getting ready to test that out. We have ceased the discharge to the environment. So I'm glad to say that. And then really mention the application will be for $3.5 million. If that ends up being the cost of the project, the annual debt payment on that would be about $200,000. Again, this is a KDHE low interest loan. Interest rate is about 1.4% right now, so it's the closest you can get to free money for us. And because this is kind of a surprise project, KDHE loan would be the preferred option just because of the lower interest rate and spreading it out over 20 years. Staff will inquire about the potential for principal forgiveness from KDHE. Typically, this is reserved for green projects and can be approved for bringing non-compliant systems into compliance. We've tried this before without success. Usually, it's the green projects that get approval. We had a meter replacement project where we upgraded all of our meter system to automated meter reading. That was a green initiative, and we got principal forgiveness for that. I'm not really holding out a lot of hope that we can get principal forgiveness, but no reason not to inquire about it. So help defray the costs of this, I kind of call a surprise project. So really with that, I'll stand for questions, and then we'll have a public hearing. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Randy and Mike. Other questions for either of them? Yeah.
Commissioner Hansel here. So, about how big is are the 4 lagoons? Is it 100 feet by 1,000 feet? Is it 200 by 900? Any ideas?
I believe each lagoon roughly holds about 10,000 cubic yards. Yeah. Typically, so we're wrapping up a project right now to remove the sludge from Lagoon 2. I want to say we bid out about 8,000 cubic yards of sludge, so a couple acres each.
About how much does that cost us each time?
So it varies. This year was the first year we've had multiple bids from local contractors. It's usually going to cost us between $140,000 to $150,000 each cell. And so we'll complete this one this year. We typically budget about $200,000 in the annual budget for line removal and disposal. We will likely change order in another basin with the same contractor and hopefully use next year's funding to get another basin cleaned out. So we usually will try to bunch these up into twos. You know, I mentioned that we're losing volume, but in the future we should produce less sludge just because of the quality of the raw water. And we're okay with losing the volume. It really all depends on is how frequently you want to clean those out.
So when it rains a couple, 3 inches on the lime sludge ponds, is there a concern once we fix the drainage ditch and is there still going to be some concern that it's going to overflow our berm and such and become, or do we feel pretty confident that most of the average storms we get will stay contained?
Traditionally, in recent years, it's overtopped maybe a couple times a year. This year we've been fortunate. I think it's only happened once, but you can imagine last year we had to deal with it several times in the course of the year. Even if we eliminate the overtopping, there's still springs that come down from Bluemont Hill and drain into this area. There's a big drainage basin around Ehlers Road and the Country Club that drains adjacent to the northwest corner of the lagoons. There's always going to be some getting in, but this will get rid of a lion's share of it. So a lot of the issues we deal with should be gone.
So the putting the concrete liner in basically just allows you to take a skid loader and scoop it up without any concern of tearing up the dirt and the liner. And if you don't put the liner and you just put bentonite or something, there's always the potential of someone's going to gouge into that and damage it. And
like I said, there's a concrete liner is preferred for maintenance. More than likely, we will look at that option very carefully. And if it's cost comparable to option 1, that would be the preferred option.
that's a lot of concrete, though, I bet.
It is.
Yeah, so.
It is. That's really where the aspect of what we have to put in for a liner system plays a big role, and that's because if I put something synthetic in there versus concrete, the costs start getting a lot more.
What you got, Rob?
Mayor, Commissioners, Rawlott, Director of Public Works. So just kind of adding on to the stormwater discussion very quickly. So we're talking about, in terms of capacity, we have a betterment which will increase the size of the penetration through the levee to allow more water to pass through. The project, the CIP number 3, which is, Randy kind of showed you that cross section, increasing the size, getting rid of the 90-degree turns. Water doesn't like to turn 90 degrees very well. Again, making the channel more efficient, increase that queue such that water can exit quicker. Also, part of the overall master plan of downtown, you have capital improvement number 1 that's currently active, which takes stormwater off of the old Blue River Channel. So there's a number of different projects that have been master planned down here to try and help balance the system and so forth. So I don't want to say that we'll never ever have water in a rainfall event overtop the channel again, because that's not true. There's certainly events that can occur out there, but we certainly are trying to balance the system. We're trying to increase. We have a number of things that are already in the works and so forth. And I think Randy provided a good answer on rainfall that occurs on the basins. I think that's where you were going to.
Yeah.
You're still going to have rainfall that falls on the basins that you're going to collect and go to the storm sanitary sewer.
So currently, obviously, if you've got 4 lagoons and you got a pipe going to each one, you kind of fill one up, move on to the next one, let it dry, haul it out eventually. And so if you had 8 of them, that's where you'd have the more piping to isolate all 6 or 8 of them.
I'd probably let Mike answer that, but I think the general premise is added flexibility. Well,
So you would, yeah.
You are correct. The normal operation for a lagoon is that you basically push sludge into that lagoon, you let it set, some of that water's gonna run off, they'll typically then start topping it off and repeat it again, but then you just let it set. So the more cells we can give them, the more flexibility they have of how long they can let it set before we do the cleanup.
Okay.
You're correct.
Any other questions on stormwater? Oh, go.
My question is, when it overtops now, where does it pool or collect or go? If it doesn't go out under that, the tube is too small under Casement Road, so it must back up into this area, is that right?
I think generally, yes. It'll, when it overtops, it fills up the 4 basins that are there. Eventually, it does make its way back into the drainage channel and then goes underneath Hayes and Casement and out into the Blue River Channel.
typically it'll wash out the berms or an outlet.
Yep.
And so the water can freely flow between the lagoons and the drainage channel. There is a wooded area here.
Right.
Kind of
To the
overgrown,
north.
and so whether it's wildlife or just trees, a lot of times that drainage channel will get, plugged up a little bit.
That's right.
So the water elevation will back up and into the lagoons.
Okay, yes.
We're getting it from a lot of different.
And when you enlarge the tube under Casement Road, what is the plan, what will happen then that's different?
Well, if you increase the A, or the area in which water can pass,
Right.
that increases your Q, or the amount of flow rate which can pass underneath that intersection of the levee.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or did I lose you?
No, I just, I know what holding it back and pooling means, and I know you're opening that, developing a plan, or planning to increase the size of the tube under a casement, which will carry more faster, obviously, than what is there now, and what has been happening when it overflows a couple of times. Like last year was a really wet year.
Essentially, the overall downtown east watershed, what we're trying to do is deal with the runoff that comes from the overall watershed. K-State is part of that. In fact, it extends almost all the way up to athletics, to NBATH. NBATH actually oversized some detention ponds and helped us out. But that's the intent of trying not to float cars at 3rd and Bluemont or 4th and Bluemont, and all the other issues that we have. One of the biggest problems is Campus Creek. When the Bertrand box today is at capacity, it simply runs down North Manhattan, runs south, then it runs to Aggieville, and it creates issues down in Aggieville because then it swamps that system, and it just compounds the overall. So when you ask what are we trying to do, we're trying to balance the system as much as possible with all these different stormwater improvement projects, such that we don't endanger property and people's structures.
And what is the impact that will take place on the east side of Casement Road and behind the levee?
So
Is that going to be a huge amount of water that's going to make a difference on the Northview side?
No,
Okay.
Not for these small events.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
No, it's a good question. In terms of the amount of queue that's passing underneath those boxes at Hayes and Casement, it's minuscule in comparison to what Tuttle Creek can do.
Okay. Because I know you've been rerouting water, so, okay.
But does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah.
it's magnitudes. It's probably factors of 10,
Okay.
if not 100.
So the place you're talking about, going to the levee, is where you had that tractor and the pump there all last summer
Right.
trying to, that was there because there was water on the backside of the levee that you couldn't open the gate and allow that stuff.
Correct, Commissioner. So the hydrostatic pressure on the wet side of the levee forced the flat gate shut. And if we would have kept that flat gate open, water would have ran backwards into the city.
Yep.
And the only way to get the water out of the black bathtub or downtown was to pump it up and over the levee.
And so that, if there's water on the wet side of the levee after this project is done, we're still gonna have issues.
Yep.
And is the plan to have a big pump like the one there at East Points?
We don't have anything that's in the bid specs for the installment of a large pump. However, we're making provisions for concrete pads. Brian and I have been talking to Corps of Engineers. We had to do a lot of makeshift field engineering last year to get those sites ready so that we could pump water over the levee. The intent is that we have things in place so that when deployment of assets and equipment come from the Corps of Engineers, we can set it up quickly and then be able to get those pumps in. Brian and I have talked about some future CIPs for pumps and so forth, but it's not in that current budget.
We could always do something like the tractor and pumps and stuff like we did before.
Tractors, we got the self-generator pumps that the Corps of Engineers loaned us for free. So, yes.
Okay.
Anything?
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
All right.
I wanted to ask just a couple questions, just maybe different approach. We're voting to say, okay, you can put in a loan application, and I guess you're gonna put in for 3.5 million? But you've got three options, which it's undetermined which one you'll build, right? Until you do some further analysis, but that goes as high as 6 million. That doesn't compute with me.
Well, obviously, we'll do a preliminary engineering report for KDHE. They'll see the options. It's not difficult to amend a loan agreement to increase the loan amount. Generally, we found that KDHE doesn't have any problems issuing more money. And we'll know, like I mentioned, the project is set for construction several years down the road. This is an application for the 2021 intended use plan, so they would reserve those funds from the 2021 plan for this project into the future.
Okay, I understand. I just wanted to be sure that, we weren't,
Yeah.
because I get it. You gotta do some more analysis to figure out which one of these is best and long-term return on maintenance and everything else. And I just want to be sure that, we ask for enough money to cover it, and I don't have a problem with that. Thank you. That clarifies it for me.
The big thing is getting an application in for next year's money. And if we need more money the year after that,
Yep.
then we'll send another amended application or something.
Absolutely.
Okay, got it.
Thank you. So the options that are in front of us are not something we need to decide tonight. That's for information's sake?
No, if we get through the engineering report and we decide that we would like to pursue, option 3, we'll come back and either before we bid the project to get your feedback, or we would formulate a bid with multiple options. And when we wanted to award the project, we'd come back for approval to award certain alternatives.
Because none of us may be here when you
That's true.
make that decision, even though we're approving an ask for KDHE this evening.
Sure.
You will have to run through all of this at that time, and things can change easily. So if you're saying in the next 2 or 3 years, will this have an impact in what we currently have? It feels like that's a long time to wait if this is unregulated and not a good thing to have?
Well, like I said, we've programmed it into the forecast. And, I mentioned in the memo, at this time, we don't anticipate that this project particularly is going to result in us having to increase rates or anything like that. We always obviously look at that on a year-to-year basis. Fortunately, we have numerous large projects in the water CIP. We talked about that at our July work session to talk about rate increases. And it's having an impact on the water fund. So we'll continue to watch that year by year. Yeah, I don't like the idea of having all these large projects. I'm going to be very critical of the dollar amount we end up spending on this project. I'm not looking to spend any extra money we don't have to, but I'm going to definitely be thorough and review all of our options. And like I said, I'm carefully watching this over the course of the next several years to make sure.
Yeah, I guess I just want to make sure we're not doing any damage by waiting.
Fortunately, the water fund traditionally has been in a good position with a good reserve just for things like this. Right now, the biggest driver on the water fund is revenues. Last year, we obviously had a lot lower revenues. This year, we're a little better, but so my job is to make sure that the revenues come in. If they don't, obviously, I've got to look at our expenditures and make sure that we're keeping adequate funds in the reserve. But we're kind of living off of those reserves right now.
Just for health purposes is what I'm thinking. When I see something like this, I worry about the health concerns and to make sure we have some mitigation efforts in place right now so this is not dangerous to our community. That's the assurance I'm looking for. So, and you're nodding your head like we do, right? So this is not like an emergency thing that we have to do right now.
No, as Randy already stated, the city's put in the temporary pumping system to eliminate the discharges to the receiving stream. That's the key piece. So we are definitely doing everything we can to protect public health.
That's good. That's what I needed to hear. Thank you so much. I will open it up for a public hearing. So if there's anybody out in the audience that would like to speak to this item, public hearing is now open. And we did not receive anything via email on this. Okay, seeing no one stepping up for public comment, I will open it back to commissioner comments and motion.
Just a comment, I am always impressed with the low interest rate of the KDHE loan process. I'd like to run everything through at that interest rate. 1.43%. But having said that.
Yeah. But I'm glad we see the necessity in it as well. And I appreciate being so prudent on all of these projects. With that, is there a motion?
I got it. Mayor Hattasol, or Commissioner Hattasol. Following a public hearing on the matter, the governing body hereby finds it advisable to submit an application with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment for a loan under the Kansas Public Water Supply Loan Fund for the WTP Lime Sludge Lagoon Improvements WA 1907 projects, and hereby approve resolution number 10/2020B authorizing the filing of said application.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Butler, I second.
Thank you. Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Hattasol?
Yes.
Commissioner Estabrook?
Yes.
Mayor Reddy?
Yes.
Commissioner Butler?
Yes.
Commissioner Morris?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And I think that's it for our meeting this evening. Okay, see y'all at
Do you want to mention what we're going to be talking about next week at the work session? It's the airport master plan, right?
The airport master
Jason?
plan at the next work session. Thank you for reminding me about that.
If people have an interest in the airport, there'll be I think, a good briefing on it. If we're going to consider the master plan, we're going to have to talk about the long term. So I think that'll be an interesting meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we are adjourned.